language models. So we'll understand what are these large language models and how to evaluate such large language models. So the agenda is as follows. So as we proceed in this session, we'll understand what are these large language models and how is it important and how is it relevant to us and how all these large language models are actually trained. We'll understand why do we evaluate these large language models, the evaluation metrics for the large language models, and we'll also look into the best practices that you need to follow for preparation for your NVIDIA Associate Generative AI LLMs. So this topic of evaluation of the large language model is one of the crucial topic that will be tested in your examination. So I'll be taking you through some of the important concepts, which is very much essential for your preparation, and not just for examination, but also for understanding the large language models in general. So that would be the overall agenda, guys. Now I see some question right here. Okay, just give me a second, folks. Let me just answer the same. I can see few questions right here. Let me just answer the same. Okay, so okay, there is one more query. I think some learners are having some queries, especially in joining. Okay, all right. So let's proceed ahead, folks. So I think now I can see the other learners also have joined in. That's great. Okay. So the agenda of today's session is we'll understand what are these large language models, how the evaluation of the large language models would work, and the metrics that we'll be using for evaluation of such large language models. So that would be the overall agenda of this session. So let's start by understanding what exactly is this large language model. But before we go ahead, I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Nachiket Murthy. I'm an MLOps manager working in a consulting firm, and I've got more than 11 years of experience in this field of data science and machine learning. And I've worked on various domains like retail, healthcare, banking, and insurance. I am certified in NVIDIA Generative AI, and I'm certified in AWS machine learning, DevOps, and my current role would include manage the team of 15 people, and I'm responsible for end-to-end pipeline, that is end-to-end implementation of data science project by using the machine learning and deep learning, which takes care of end-to-end, which means starting from the experimentation till the operationalization of the machine learning models in the production environment. I'm passionate about teaching. I've trained more than 50,000 learners across the globe in the field of this data science and machine learning. So I'll be taking you in the same way where how I'll be conducting in my live session, where I'll take you through the insights. I'll try to make it simple so that you can understand everything in detail so that even with a person with limited knowledge can get the most out of this session. So that is the overall agenda, guys. So let's proceed ahead. Yes, I want to know from you as well, folks. So can you please let me know in the chat window about your name, where are you from, and what's your knowledge level when we talk about the large language model? Okay, so can you please introduce yourself? So please go ahead, introduce yourself, folks. I'll give you a few minutes. I see some learners have already responded. In the meantime, I can see a few more queries as well. Let me just answer those two. Okay, I see Darshan has responded. Darshan is a beginner. Rajiv, okay, Darshan is from Bangalore, have some knowledge of LLM. That's great. And Rajiv over here is uh, is from Delhi, okay, has a beginner knowledge in LLM, okay. And I see Pratap has responded. Pratap is also a beginner and he's from, okay, Mumbai. Okay, that's great, Pratap. And I see uh, Lakshmi Kant have responded. Okay, I see Sanjeev. Okay, I can see all of you. And I see similar response from Rakshita, Samyukta. So I can see most of the folks who have joined with us today are actually beginners. Okay, so how about others, guys? So I still see a few more learners have joined. So can you please introduce yourself, your name, where are you from, and your knowledge level of large language models? Okay, Samyukta. Okay, Samyukta has some level have been following along the self-paced. Okay, thank you, Samyukta. Okay, Laksh. Okay, Lakshmi is a beginner. Excellent, guys. So I can see the learners who have joined with us today are beginners. That's completely fine. So here in this learning journey today, we'll go in a way such that even the beginner should be able to follow along and understand about the evaluation of the large language models. All right. So since most of you are beginners, let's start with some basics, like a quick background about these LLMs. So LLMs are a type of artificial intelligence. Now they are designed to understand and generate the human language. So that's what an LLM is all about. Like an example can be a famous one, that's the Chat GPT. That's an example of large language model. So Chat GPT is an application. It uses the large language model in the backend in order to generate the response. So that's the overall idea about this LLM, that is a large language model. Now, the way this is going to work is these LLMs have been trained on vast amounts of text data. It can be books, it can be articles, it can be website. So it will be trained on very vast amount of text data. Okay, once it has been trained on these vast amounts of text data, so what we will do is we would go ahead and learn the pattern and look into the grammar as well as the context from this given data. So that's what we are going to do right here. Like the large language models is going to understand all these patterns from this text data. Then once it has learned all such pattern, then we would go ahead and use this knowledge to predict and generate the text. So that's the core idea of how these large language models is going to work. Okay, so it has been trained on vast amounts of text data. So it can learn pattern from this vast amounts of text data, and we'll be using this knowledge, this large language model will use such knowledge in order to generate the text. So that is how the large language models are actually trained. Now, let's take a look into the key features. Since it has been trained on vast amounts of text data, so what are the key features that it would generally exhibit? So it exhibits the language understanding. That means these large language models can comprehend the questions as well as the prompt. So it can comprehend what is happening in the text data. So what is being asked, it can understand the text data, and it can also understand what user is actually requesting. Like generally the input that we specify to our neural network, is called as prompt. So we'll be able to understand and get to know about the prompts while we are working. And another key feature of working with this large language model is the text generation. So here it can create coherent and contextually relevant text. So whatever the inputs that we would expect, okay, whatever the inputs that we would send or the question that we would ask to our large language model, this is going to generate the coherent and contextually relevant text. So that's another great thing about these large language model. And another great thing is versatility. So because of this, we can use these large language models for various tasks such as writing, answering the question, translating the language, or even performing the text classification. So these are all some of the key features of working with large language models. Okay, now because of these features, so we see the usage of large language models in various applications. To name a few, it is used in customer support, like answering the queries and providing the relevant information to the end users. And another application is content creation, where we can use these large language models in writing the article, creating the blog, as well as the creation of the reports when the user provides any input. And another application is language translation. Like can use these large language models in translating the text between the languages. It's used in education, that is in assisting with learning and tutoring. So you can see that because of large language models, which has been trained on large amount of text, okay, since it has learned a lot of patterns that is present in this given data set, so we'll be able to get the full benefit of this large language model because it can be directly used for the other task. Now, let me just introduce one of the technical terms that we generally call it. We generally call a term that's called as zero shot learning. Okay, that's a common term that we would call when we are dealing with or when we are working with this large language model. So when I say zero shot learning, it's a scenario where uh, like we'll be able to perform a task on the large language model, even though the large language model has not been trained on such task. Like for example, I can go ahead and use this large language model in performing the task, like for an example, classification, even though my large language model might not have been trained for the task of classification explicitly. Now, this technique is actually called as zero shot learning. Okay, so all these applications are basically the outcome of zero shot learning. Now, apart from zero shot learning, we can also make use of other techniques as well. We have something called as few shot learning. Now, in the scenario of this few shot learning, what happens is we will provide the examples. We'll provide the simple examples. And once we provide the initial simple examples, we will use such examples. Okay, we will use such example and like we'll provide the example and then we'll also ask a question related to that example. Now, the large language model will process our example as well as the new question. Post that, we'll be able to, like the large language model is able to generate the response. So that's the overall idea of the applications of these large language models. Okay, now that you have seen the large language model and its application, so what are the benefits? Well, some of the main benefits of using such large language models, and that's the reason that is being used in various industries these days, is the efficiency. So with these large language model, we are able to save time by automating the text-based task. So we are able to save time by automating the text-based task. So previously, whatever the tasks that we were doing manually, now we can automate it because we have a way where we can understand the natural language data. Previously, we had a great challenge, especially in understanding the natural language data. Now, with this large language model, we are able to save time because we have a way to understand this text data, that is the natural language data, and we can automate such text-based tasks. And another key benefit is consistency. So it provides consistent quality, especially when it comes to response and the content. And scalability, since it's a computer powered, it can be scaled to large volumes of queries and tasks as well. Because of this, we see a huge demand these days, even for the people who are having an understanding of these large language models, which can help the business in building the application and use such large language model in their production environment. So that's the overall idea and the importance of these large language models. So with these advantages, we also have some disadvantage as well, which we call it as a limitation. Now, when we consider the limitation, so one of the major limitation, especially while working with large language models, is the bias. So here, when we are dealing with the training data, if the training data contains the bias, then the response from the large language model can also inherit such biases from the training data. And another limitation is the accuracy. So when we are dealing with large language model, it can also generate the incorrect or nonsensical information. So this is something we always have to monitor to ensure that the responses from the large language model is in alignment with our expectation and the understanding aspect of it. So here it lacks true understanding and the common sense. So here one of the main disadvantage that we get when we are working with large language model is, since it is going to look at the text data, sometimes it misses out, especially on the common sense. Like for example, if I say sun rises in west, then from grammatical side, it might make sense. But from the common sense aspect of it, it doesn't happen, isn't it? So those are some of the nuances which my large language models will generally struggle. Now, there are some ways to mitigate it as well. That's by providing more data and ensuring that we are having the enough data from diverse domain. But these are all the high level limitation that we would face when we are working with the large language models. Okay. Now, when we are working with large language model, so it's always important that we should be able to evaluate the large language models, because this is being used in various industries and each industry has its own requirement when it comes to evaluation of the products when they start using it in their business environment. So that's where the importance of large language model would come into picture, especially the evaluation of these large language models would come into picture. So one, the reason that we want to evaluate the large language models, because one is a performance measurement. So by evaluating the large language models, it will help us to determine how well a model performs on various tasks such as text generation, machine translation, summarization, question answering, and more. So this involves assessing the accuracy, coherence, relevance, and other qualitative factors to check whether the large language models that we have got, whether its performance is in alignment with our requirement. And another reason that we want to evaluate the large language models, because model improvement by identifying the strengths and the weaknesses. This will help us to provide the valuable feedback for refining and improving the large language models. And this iterative process is very much essential for developing more capable and reliable large language models. And another reason these large language model evaluation important, because the evaluation allows the comparison with other models. So this will establish the benchmark that guide future developments, and it will also help us to understand the state of the art in the given field. And another reason is bias and fairness. So as I've described earlier during the disadvantages of the large language model, if we have the biasness in our training data, then this will be seen even in the responses of the large language model as well. So it's very important that we are able to assess the model for biasness as well as the fairness. Now, this is essential to ensure that they do not propagate or exacerbate, especially especially when we are dealing with the sensitive data set. So this involves checking for demographic biases, ethical consideration, and potential harmful output. So because of this reason, it's very important that we have a robust method when it comes to evaluation of these large language models. Now that we have learned about why these evaluations are important, so let's take a look into some of the, okay, yeah, this is additional information as why we require the large evaluation of large language models. So another is the safety and robustness. So by performing the evaluation, this will help us in identifying the vulnerabilities that we have got, and this will ensure the model behaves safely and reliably in the various conditions, including the adversarial input. The user trust. So user trust is nothing but high quality evaluation. When we implement it on a large language model, it builds the trust with the users, and this will ensure that the output from the model are reliable, accurate, and most importantly, useful. Next, another key thing is regulatory and compliance. So by evaluating the model, this will ensure that the models that we are going to deploy is in compliant with the industry standard, regulations, and the ethical guideline, which is especially important when we are dealing with the sensitive applications such as the healthcare, finance, legal services, where people are impacted. In such scenarios, it's very important that we have a better evaluation metrics over there. Another main thing is scalability and efficiency. So by evaluating the models, large language models, it will help us to understand how models perform with various resources. So it will help us in optimizing them for various hardware and deployment scenarios. And this will ensure that they can be used efficiently in the real world applications. Okay. Now, when it comes to evaluation methods for these large language models, these are some of the commonly used evaluation methods for the large language model. So we can categorize the evaluation of the large language models into various types such as intrinsic evaluation, extrinsic evaluation, behavioral evaluation, user and user experience evaluation, that usability and user experience evaluation, and efficiency and scalability evaluation. So let's talk about one by one. Now, when we say intrinsic evaluation, it assesses the model's performance on a specific language task. Now, this will not consider the broader application context. I'll just be focused on specific language task. Now we have something called as extrinsic evaluation. So this is going to assess the model's performance within the context of a specific application. Now we have various methods under these. We'll talk about it very shortly. And the next evaluation type that we have got is behavioral evaluation. Now, in the case of this behavioral evaluation, this analyzes how the model behaves in different scenarios under varying inputs. Now, these methods focus on how end users interact with and perceive the model. And another technique that we have got is efficiency and scalability evaluation. So this will assess the model's performance, especially concerning the resource usage and the scalability. Okay. And let's take a look into the intrinsic evaluation methods. So there are multiple methods under this intrinsic evaluation. So to name a few, we have an important one that's called as perplexity. So this perplexity will measure how well a probability model predicts a given sample. So in order to calculate the perplexity, we'll make use of a respective formula. And when we do the calculation, if we get a lower perplexity, it indicates there is a better performance of this. The model that we have got has got a better performance. And it is commonly used in the large language models. So that's the overall importance of it. And blue, which is known as bilingual evaluation understudy. Now, this is also one of the important metric. Now, this measures the similarity between the generated sentence and the reference sentence. Now, this blue score is actually calculated based on what we call as n-gram precision. So when we are using this n-gram precision, we are also going to include the penalty for short sentences. Now, this is commonly used, especially when we are dealing with the tasks such as the machine translation. And the other method that we have got is called as the rogue, which is known as recall-oriented understudy for gisting evaluation. So this measures the overlap of n-grams between the generated text and the reference text. The blue score is going to measure the similarity, but here we are going to look into the overlap. Okay, there are actually two types of rogue metric. One is rogue n, which we call as n-gram overlap, and rogue L, which is longest common subsequence. So this is also used for the summarization task. Now, under this intrinsic evaluation, we also have other metrics such as meteor. Now, this is known as metric for evaluation of translation with explicit ordering. So this considers the synonymy, stemming, and word order when it is performing the evaluation. So the way that we do it is like this calculation involves F1 score, which will combine the precision and recall. And this meteor, an important thing to know is this is used in a task such as the machine translation and paraphrase evaluation. Now, under this intrinsic evaluation technique, we have one more technique that's called as the CIDR, which is known as consensus-based image description evaluation. So here in this case, we use this metric, especially when we are dealing with the tasks such as image captioning. So this measures the consensus in the image captioning. So in order to calculate this metric, we'll be using the term frequency and inverse document frequency weightage. Okay, so this is generally used in image captioning. So from the examination standpoint, it's very important that you understand this metric and what is the use case of these metric. So the common type of questions that we would generally expect is, so suppose if I'm dealing with the task of machine translation, which metric is recommended to evaluate my large language model? So that's when you can choose the meteor in the options if it is present, or you can also choose the blue. So these are the two most commonly used metric when it comes to the machine translation. Now, all these are relevant to the intrinsic evaluation. Moving on, we have something called as extrinsic evaluation. Now, when we say extrinsic evaluation, we'll be evaluating the model based on how well it performs a specific end task, like for example, question answering or sentiment analysis. So this would involve the metrics which are relevant to the task like accuracy, F1 score, precision, and recall. So this would come under the extrinsic evaluation technique. Then we have something called as human evaluation. So here, this basically the humans will be evaluating the large language model's performance. So the criteria that will be used by the humans will be is how fluent the text is, what is the coherence, relevance, informativeness, and even the overall quality. And generally, when we are doing the evaluation, the humans will be evaluating the generated text in terms of ratings, a rating scale, like 1 to 5, or sometimes we'll also make use of the pairwise comparison or ranking. So this is about the extrinsic evaluation. Then we have something called as behavioral evaluation. So under this behavioral evaluation, we have got adversarial testing, bias and fairness testing, safety and ethical evaluation. Under the adversarial testing, we'll check the model's performance, especially by introducing the adversarial examples. So the core idea of performing this kind of testing is to identify the vulnerabilities and also measure the robustness. And the another metric that we would use is bias and fairness testing. So the idea is to assess the model for biases and the fairness. So the method that we would use is bias detection tools, demographic parity, equalized odds, and also the disparate impact analysis. And under the behavioral evaluation, we'll also be interested in safety and ethical evaluation too. So here, the idea is to evaluate the model's adherence to ethical guidelines and the safety standards. And the general criteria is avoidance of the harmful output, adherence to the privacy standards, and compliance with ethical norms. Then we have something called as usability and user experience evaluation. So under this usability and user experience, so this looks into the usability and user experience aspect of it. Now here, under this case, so what we would be doing is, so like we can make use of the user satisfaction survey. So we can actually collect the feedback and about their satisfaction with the model output. Now, in order to do that, we can make use of the metrics such as satisfaction score, net promoter score. So these are the things that we can use it to evaluate the same. And then we can also make use of something called as the A/B testing. So by using this A/B testing, so we can actually compare two versions of the model to determine which actually performs better in practice. So one of the common metric that we would use is under this technique is A/B testing is conversion rate, user engagement, and task completion rate. Okay, so like this is about the user and user experience evaluation. And finally, guys, we have the efficiency and scalability evaluation. Now, as you can clearly see, the evaluation of these large language models is very much is very much different than what we generally use it for evaluation. So here in this case, we also consider the scalability aspect as well. So one is the inference time. So we will measure the time taken by the model to generate the output. So this is especially critical for real-time application and resource utilization. Now under this, we will assess the computational resources that is required by the model. And generally we refer to the metrics such as CPU or GPU usage, memory footprint, as well as the energy consumption. And under the scalability and efficiency testing, we also have scalability testing. We'll evaluate how well the model scales when the data increases or when the number of users increases. So in order to do these kind of evaluation, we make use of the methods such as the load testing and stress testing. So that is how you can evaluate these large language models. All right, team. So these are about some of the important metrics that you need to be aware when we think about the large language models and how we can evaluate such large language models. Now I'll take a pause here. So folks, do you have any questions or any queries on the topic that we have learned so far? So if you're clear so far, please confirm by typing in as all good before we go to the next segment as how you can enhance your preparation. Okay. I can also see a learner, Ola Lekan from Nigeria. Okay, he's also a beginner. Okay, I'm seeing now Ola Lekan. All right. So I see Rakshit says all good. Sridhar says, okay, I'm okay, sir. Diksha says all good. Mio says all good. All right, perfect, guys. Okay, so I can see confirmations from most of you. All right, now here, so one of the common question that we used to get is, so as you're already aware, we are already having the self-paced content on the self-paced learning journey, and we generally conduct these live webinar sessions on NVIDIA Generative AI examination preparation. Now, one of the common question that we were getting is there is any boot camp where we as a learner can enroll and stay committed to the boot camp, and at the end, we are able to achieve the certification. So here, as per the request from most of you guys, so we have launched a boot camp. Now, we were generally conducting these boot camp with our corporate partners for their employees. Now, we have opened the similar boot camp even for the individual learners too. So this is the details of the upcoming boot camp that we have got. And I'm sharing you the link over here in the chat window. So folks, this is a boot camp where we'll be having the live learning session, and this is focused on the examination preparation. The timing is 9 p.m. IST to 11 p.m. IST, and the total duration is 16 hours. And this will be on weekdays, that is between Monday to Friday. And the class dates are between 8 July 2024 to 17 July 2024. Okay, the classes will be delivered live, just like we have joined the webinar. You will be joining it in the Zoom link, okay? And you will have a lifetime access to these sessions recording. So you'll have a lifetime access to the sessions recording, and you can watch it any number of times. Okay, so that's one of the key thing about this live session, live bootcamp that we have got. Now, one of the key difference from the self-paced is, so in the self-paced, so the rate of completion is very less, even though the learner joins it, the time commitment and the preparation, it's not so simple. So that's what we have seen with various learners to increase to increase the success rate, to increase the completion rate, to ensure that you as a learner get the most in your career, especially in this most in-demand field of this generative AI. So we have created this generative AI bootcamp, guys, and this pricing that you see on the website, depending on your location, I think you'll be able to see the pricing in that location wise. So this price that you see on the site is an early bird pricing, and this will be expiring very soon. And this is for limited seats only. So ensure that you register yourself on this upcoming bootcamp, and I'll see you on the bootcamp, guys. Now, folks, if you have got any other question on your learning journey or your preparation standpoint, please feel free to let me know. So I look forward to seeing you on our next webinar session, guys. So thank you again, everyone, for joining in and asking some of the amazing questions. So I'll be here for a few more minutes to answer any other questions that you might have. Okay, Rakshita says, sir, when can I get the live? Okay, so you'll be getting the access like one day before the session, you'll be getting that link. All right, I've shared the link in the YouTube chat window as well for the learners who have joined through YouTube. Okay, thank you, Mew. All right, thank you, Prakash. Okay, okay, let me just confirm you, Sanjeev. Sanjeev says I've registered. Okay, give me a second, Sanjeev. Okay, congratulations, Sanjeev. Yes, I can see your uh, registration successful. Your seat is confirmed, and I welcome you on this NVIDIA certification bootcamp. Thank you so much, Sanjeev. Yes, I'll see you on the session one. Okay, Prakash. All right. So congratulations, Prakash. Yes, I see your admission confirmation too. So thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you on our live session.